Hey guys, this is Mrs. Yeagle, and this is probably the first half of chapter 13. It's called The Second Bomb. No one was in the kitchen of Shinhu's restaurant when the bomber set a tall can labeled monosodium glutamate behind similar cans on a shelf. The color-striped candle would burn down to the fuse at 6:30. Whoever was working there would be at the other side of the room. No one would get hurt. Due to the unfortunate damage to the coffee shop, Shinhu's restaurant is prepared to satisfy all dinner accommodations. Order down or ride up to the 5th floor. Treat your taste buds to a scrumptious meal while feasting your eyes on the stunning snowscape before it melts away. Reasonable prices, too. Grace Wexler tacked her sign to the elevator wall as she rode up to her new job. She was going to be the seating hostess. "Where's the cook?" Mr. Hu shouted, meaning his wife. He found Madame Hu in their rear 4th floor apartment, kneeling before her bamboo trunk, fingering mementos from her childhood in China. He hurried her up to the kitchen, too harried to find the words that would explain what was happening. Now, where was that lazy son of his? Doug jogged in from a tiring workout on the stairs. How was he supposed to know the restaurant would open early? Nobody bothered telling him. "Some student you are. Anyone with the brain of an anteater would have figured that out. People are short of food. The coffee shop is closed for repairs. Stop arguing, go take a shower, and put on your busboy outfit. Get moving!" "Don't you think you're rather hard on the boy?" Grace commented. "Somebody's got to give him a shove. If he had his way, he'd do nothing but run," Hu replied between bites of chocolate. "You're not so easy on Angela either." Angela? Angela was born good, the perfect child. As for the other one, well, it's not easy being a parent, Hu said woefully. "You can say that again." Grace held her breath. Her husband would have done that, said it again, but Mr. Hu only nodded and shared sympathy. What a gentleman. Only Mr. and Mrs. Theodorakis ordered down. The other tenants of Sunset Towers lined up at the reservations desk, waiting for Grace Windsor Wexler to lead the way. Oversized menus clutched in her arms, Grace felt the first proud stirrings of power rush up from her pedicured toes to the very top curl on her head. If Uncle Sam could pair off people, so could she. "You see your brother every day, Chris. How about eating with someone else for a change?" She wheeled the boy to a window table without waiting for an answer. It would have been yes. The two cripples together, Sidel Pulaski thought. She'd show that high and mighty hostess. She'd show them all. She and Chris could have private jokes too, and everybody would be sorry they weren't sitting with them. "Was mugu gupin?" Chris asked, baffled by the strange words on the menu. "I think it's boiled grasshopper." Sidel screwed up her face and Chris laughed. "Or chocolate-covered mousse." "French fry mouse," Chris offered. Now Sidel laughed. They both laughed heartily, but no one envied them. "Your brother seems to be enjoying Miss Pulaski." Theo nodded, awed by the beautiful Angela, 3 years older than he. So fair-skinned and blonde, so unattainable. Here he was, sitting at the very same table with her, just the two of them, and he couldn't think of a single thing to say that wasn't stupid or childishly stupid. Usually the quiet one, Angela tried again. "Are you planning on going to college next year?" Theo nodded, then shook his head. "Say something, idiot. I got a scholarship to Madison, but I'm not going. I'm going to work instead." What big, worried, sky blue eyes. "The operation for Chris will be very expensive." That was worse. Now she's feeling sorry for him. If Chris had been born that way, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but he was a perfectly normal kid, a great kid, and he's smart, too. About 4 years ago, he started to get clumsy. Just little things at first. "Perhaps my fiancé can help?" Angela bit her lip. Theo was not asking for charity. And fiancé, what an old-fashioned, silly word. "I went to college for a year. I wanted to be a doctor, but, well, we don't have as much money as my mother pretends. Dad said he could manage if that's what I really wanted, but my mother said it was too difficult for a woman to get into medical school." Why was she gabbing like this? "I want to be a writer," Theo said. That really sounded like kid stuff. Would you go back to college if you won the inheritance? Angela looked down. It was a question she did not want to answer, or could not answer. Long before becoming a judge, Josie Joe Ford had decided to stop smiling. Smiling without good reason was demeaning. A serious face put the smiler on the defensive. A rare smile put a nervous witness at ease. So now she bestowed one of her rare smiles on the dressmaker. I'm so glad we have this chance to become acquainted, Mrs. Bomback. I had so little time to chat with my guests last night. It was a wonderful party. Flora Bomback appeared even smaller and rounder than she was as she sat twisting her napkin with hands accustomed to being busy. Was her face permanently creased from years of pleasing customers, or was a tragedy lurking behind that grin? Have you always specialized in wedding gowns? Mr. Bomback and I had a shop for many years. Bombacks for the bride and groom. Perhaps you've heard of it? I'm afraid not. The judge would have said no in any case to keep her witness talking. Perhaps you've heard of Flora's bridal gowns. That's what I called my shop after my husband left. I don't know much about groom's clothes. They're mostly rentals anyway. Flora Bomback lost her timidity. The judge let her chat away. I'm using heirloom lace on the bodice of Angela's gown. It's been in my family for 3 generations. I wore it at my wedding, and I dreamed that someday I'd have a daughter who would wear it too, but Rosalie didn't come along until I was in my 40s, and the dressmaker stopped. Her lips tightened into an even wider grin. Angela will make such a beautiful bride. Funny how she reminds me of her. Angela reminds you of your daughter? The judge asked. Oh, my, no. Angela reminds me of another young girl I made a wedding dress for, Violet Westing. The heavy charms on Sidel Pulaski's bracelet clinked and clunked as she raised a full fork and flourished it in a practiced ritual before aiming it at her open mouth. Chris's movements were even jerkier. She's a good person, he thought, but she thinks too much about herself. Maybe she never had anybody to love. Here, let me help you to some of this delicious sweet and sour ostrich. Their laughter drowned out the loud groan from another table where Turtle sat alone, a transistor radio plugged in her ear. The stock market had dropped another 12 points. I'm starved. Let's sit down to eat. Head held high, Grace Wexler led her husband across the restaurant. All I want is a corned beef sandwich, not a guided tour. Would you prefer to sit alone or with that young lady over there? Oh, I thought I was going to sit with you. Please be seated, Grace replied. Mr. Who will take your order shortly. Jake snatched the menu from his wife and watched her glide, gracefully, he had to admit, to the reservations desk and whisper in Who's ear. Jimmy, she calls him. That's a fine kettle of fish, he exclaimed, then turned to his dinner companion. Fine kettle of fish. I'm so hungry, even that sounds good. And from the looks of this menu, that's probably what I'll get. I'm okay, Turtle replied, the final prices of actively traded stocks tumbling in her ear. Mr. Who waddled over. I recommend the striped bass. See, what did I tell you? A kettle of fish. Turtle switched off the radio. She'd heard enough bad news for one day. How about spare ribs done to a crisp, Who suggested. Then he lowered his voice. What's the point spread on the Packers game? See me later, Jake muttered. Go ahead and tell him, Daddy, Turtle said. I know you're a bookie. Can you stand on your legs? Sidel Pulaski asked. Can you walk at all? People never asked Chris those questions. They whispered them to his parents behind his back. No. Why? What better disguise for a thief or a murderer than a wheelchair? That's the perfect alibi. Chris enjoyed being taken for the criminal type. Now they really were friends. When you remember notes? What? Oh, read you my notes. Soon. Very soon. Sidel daintily touched the corners of her mouth with the napkin, pushed back her chair, and grabbed her polka dot crutch. That was a superb meal. I must give my compliments to the chef. She rose, knocking the chair to the floor, and clumped toward the kitchen door. Where's she going? Angela